onto an active film set where I got a selfie with a Gotham City police cruiser, which was pretty cool. Now, I like that movie a lot, but the show they did about the Penguin on HBO was pretty good too. And I really hope they start working on a movie sequel sometime soon. So maybe next time I can get a selfie with Zoe Kravitz. Fingers crossed on that one. Now, if you guys look in front of our boat on the right, there is a white building with a clock tower on top of it. That white building with the clock tower on it, that's called the Wrigley Building, or the building that Chewing Gum built. You guys probably know Wrigley's name from Juicy Fruit Gum, or if you're a baseball fan, the field where the Cubbies play. But before any of that, Wrigley was a detergent salesman, not a very good. Wrigley was having a hard time turning a profit on detergents, so he had to rely on gimmicks. One of the gimmicks Wrigley came up with was including a stick of gum in every box of detergent that he sold. Now, this gimmick worked, but not how Wrigley wanted. People were buying Wrigley detergent just to throw it out and chew the gum. When Wrigley discovered this, he cut out the middleman and started selling packets of gum directly to the people for a penny apiece. When Wrigley paid for that building to be built, it cost him around $2 million, all of which Wrigley paid for in cash. That is a lot of pennies and a lot of sticks of gum. On the right is a glassy building. Looks like it has an iPad on the roof of it. That's Chicago's downtown Apple store. I talk about them because they gave me this free iPhone. But the real reason I talk about them is the site where that building sits. That's where Chicago's first ever permanent settlement was. A man from Haiti named Jean-Baptiste Pont-du-Sable. He moved here to Chicago where he fell in love with a Native American woman named Kitty Hawa. Him and Kitty Hawa opened up a fur trading outpost right where the Apple store sits today and permanently put Chicago on the map as a Midwestern trading hub city. Now, the next few buildings I'm going to be talking about are all going to be on our left-hand side, starting with this building with a little bend in it. This building with the bend, that is the London Guarantee and Accident Building. It was originally an insurance building. In fact, it was the first insurance building in the entire city where you could take out a policy on your boat. Nowadays, though, that building is home to the London House Hotel, a rather swanky establishment that right up there on top of it is a rooftop bar with a great view of the downtown area. Now, the best thing about that bar, folks, as well, you don't even need to be staying in the hotel to go to that bar. I've been to that bar plenty of times. I've never spent a night in the hotel. If you do go up there, just know you're not only going to be paying for your drink, you're also paying for the view. Right next to it is a skinny white building. I like to call that the Gothic Rocket, but its real name is the Mothra Tower. When the Mothra Tower was built, it was the tallest building here in Chicago for about 20 days. That was until another building was completed and took the top spot. As you guys can see, the Mothra Tower gets skinnier as it gets taller. In fact, it gets so skinny at the top of it that you can't fit an elevator shaft in it that'll reach all the way up. So if you want to get to the top of that building, you're going to have to climb a lot of stairs. Now, you can rent out the top of that building for a special occasion, like a marriage proposal, for example. But if you're going to pay all that money, climb all those stairs, and ask somebody to marry you, you better hope that they say yes. And I guess if they don't, you can just shut it out the side. Staying on the left-hand side, we have a square building with domes on the corners and a big dome on the roof. That is the Jewelers Building. The Jewelers Building was the first building in the entire world to have a car elevator. The reason for this is the jewelers of old Chicago, they were afraid of walking from their offices to their cars and getting mugged by one of Al Capone's associates. So the architect behind that building invented the car elevator, allowing the jewelers to drive their cars directly up into their offices. Unfortunately, though, by the 1950s, American cars got way too big and way too heavy that the elevator in that building was put out of commission permanently, and most of the jewelers ended up moving out to our Jewelers Row area on Wabash Avenue. If you look on the left, there's a dark gray building. It has a lot of windows and kind of popped out corners. This dark gray building with the windows and popped out corners, that is 35 West Wacker, or the Leo Burnett Building, home of the Leo Burnett Advertising Agency. Now, you might not know that name, Leo Burnett, but I guarantee you know something that they created. The Leo Burnett Agency is responsible for creating characters like Tony the Tiger, Snap, Crackle, and Pop, the Jolly Green Giant, the Marlboro Man, and the Mayhem Guy from the Allstate commercials, just to name a few. If anyone on board has ever seen the AMC TV show Mad Men, the advertising office in Mad Men was based on the office right over there at 35 West Wacker. Now, the coolest thing to me about this building are these popped out corners. That was not done for architectural reasons, more so financial ones. See, the architect behind the building knew that guys in advertising were going to be in this building. Well, he had a sneaking suspicion that gentlemen who work in advertising are all going to have big egos and all want a corner office. So we bumped out the corners of that building to double offices available, which also doubled the amount of rent they were able to charge these executives. Let's switch to the right-hand side where there's a red brick building with a clock tower on top. This red brick building with a clock tower on top of it, this is the oldest building I'm going to be talking about on our cruise today. And this is called the Murdoch Center. Now, a lot of folks here in Chicago, myself included, don't like this building very much. The reason why most people dislike it is that this building on our right used to be the home of Chicago's traffic court. That's not a big deal to me, though, because I don't own a car. I live in a city with great public transportation, so I never felt the need to buy a vehicle. If I need to get somewhere, I can take the bus, I can take the train, sometimes I even get to take the boat. Now, the reason why I dislike this building, folks, is that it's asymmetrical. There's 5 columns on one side and 6 on the other. That's because this bridge in front of us, LaSalle Street, it did not exist when this building was built. So when they put that bridge into the city, they chopped off the end of that building and thought nobody would notice. But they did not count on me, ladies and gentlemen, going by this building 5 times a day, every single day, every single tour season. Every single time I go by that building, it burrows itself a little deeper in my skin. Now let's talk about all these bridges we've been going under. These are what are called trunnion bascule bridges. This is a portmanteau of 2 French words that mean fixed point and seesaw. That's because all these bridges can open and shut. They'll stay shut most of the time, but when a large boat with a big tall mast needs to go by, they open up the bridges and allow them to pass by. Now, Chicago does not have the most bridges in the world. Does anybody on board know what city has the most? Hamburg in Germany. Most bridges in the entire world are in Hamburg. Chicago, though, has the most bridges that you can open and close, which I think is pretty neat. Coming up on the right, we have a massive tan building right on our right-hand side. This huge building, this is called the Merchandise Mart, and the Merchandise Mart has the 3rd most square footage out of any building in North America. The only buildings with more square footage than this one are the Sears Tower, which we already saw, and the Pentagon, which we're not going to see today because that's in Washington, D.C. This building is so massive that when it was built, it had its own zip code. Today it has its own CTA train station. It was built in the early 1900s by the great merchants of the day. People like Sears Roebuck, Montgomery Ward, and Marshall Field. They decided to pool their resources on this massive office and showroom space. And well, if you look down in front of it, you can see what David Letterman called the world's largest Pez dispensers. These are busts of the great merchants, and the reason why they're not facing us folks is a good merchant should never turn his back on his shop. Now, unfortunately for these gentlemen, shortly after this building opened up to the public, the Great Depression came around. They had to sell that building off in order to maintain their other businesses. And well, the person that eventually bought it was a man who made his fortune bootlegging illegal Canadian whiskey during Prohibition. That man's name, folks, was Joe Kennedy, father of United States President John F. Kennedy. That building stayed in the Kennedy family up until the 90s, where it was sold off for a very healthy profit. Now, this area we're right now, this is known as Wolf Point. And as you guys can see, we have 3 riverbanks here at Wolf Point. We got one to our left, we got one to our right, we got one in front of us. And each of these riverbanks had some of Chicago's first ever buildings. This riverbank on our left is where Chicago's first ever school was. They also built a tavern. That bank that's in front of us is where Chicago's first ever general store was. They built a tavern there as well. And then this bank that's on the right, kind of behind us, is where Chicago's first ever church was. You want to guess what else they built there? Another tavern. You guys are correct. Chicagoans have always loved to drink. Our ratio of bars to churches back in the day was 3-to-1. That ratio is still true today. Chicago's a very religious city. I don't know if you guys know this, but the first ever American Pope, guess where he's from? Right here in Chicago. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I asked Captain Alejandro to do you guys a special treat. We're actually going to be able to do a special extended tour on the Chicago River. This is stuff normally nobody ever gets to see when they take these tours. Captain Alejandro decided to do it as a special favor for all of you guys. So on the count of 3, let's all say thank you, Captain Alejandro. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, Captain Alejandro. We appreciate it. We actually have a cool selfie opportunity on the right-hand side, so feel free to take out your phone camera and wave at yourself in the reflection of this building. All right, as we cruise down the south branch of the river on this special extended bonus tour, it's a good time to talk about Chicago's Riverwalk. Now, about 20 years ago, the city put out an ordinance that said if you're going to be building something on the Riverwalk, it's got to have a publicly accessible Riverwalk area. And well, a good example of this is the Bank of America Tower over here on our left-hand side. As you can see, the architects had to cut out the side of the building, allowing the Riverwalk to be accessible right over there. On the right-hand side, you guys can see the Boeing Building. The Boeing Building is pretty neat because its design was inspired by the castles of medieval Europe. And one way we know this building was made to look like a castle, so if you look behind us, you guys can see there is a little extension where it has the address plate of the building. That's said to be the drawbridge. Well, if that's a drawbridge and that's a castle, that must mean we're sailing on its moat. Now here on the left-hand side is the Civic Opera Building. How I remember the name of this building is an old tour guide secret. And this is a cool building because it's a hybrid. It's both an opera building and it's also an office tower. This flat area is where the stage of the opera is. The towers that on either side of it are office towers. Now this was very, very smart because this building also opened up shortly before the Great Depression. Once the Depression rolled around though, nobody had any money to go to the opera. The opera company maintained their ownership of the building due to the fact they were leasing out the office space on either side of it. Nowadays, this building is home to the Lyric Opera, which is a great way to spend a night. When you go to the opera, you feel very classy. It's a very enjoyable experience. Coming up on the right, we have a series of buildings, starting with this black building on the right-hand side. That is called Gateway 1. The black building in front of that is called Gateway 2. The white building in front of that, that's called Gateway 3. And behind the white building, there's a black curved building, and that is called Gateway 4. Now, the Gateway series of buildings was designed by the German architect Mies van der Rohe. Mies van der Rohe studied at the Bauhaus School of Architecture, but he fled the Nazis and he came here to Chicago and he made it his second home. Now, Mies van der Rohe is known for creating what is called modernism, or the international style. His design philosophy was not very flashy. He believed in symmetry. He believed in blacks and whites. And well, he said a lot of things. One of these things is that less is more. Now, I don't like modernism very much, so I say less is more. But if you do like these buildings, there's nothing at all wrong with that. Now, the reason why I call this international style is you could pluck these buildings up from where they sit in Chicago, and you could take them to any major city all around the entire world. You could put them in Denver, you could put them in Berlin, you could put them really anywhere, and these buildings would not look that out of place. Now, if you look below these Mies van der Rohe buildings, you guys might have noticed some train tracks running below the buildings. Now, the train tracks running below the buildings, they're part of Chicago's Union Station, but these train tracks actually used to be open to the air. They used to be open to the air, folks. That meant you would be able to look up above you. However, as the city started to develop more and more, they needed more space to build, and the train companies found out that they had access to something called air rights. What air rights mean is that if you own a piece of land, you own all the air that it is above it as well. So the train companies, they leased out the air above them to the city, leading many people to believe that the train companies made their money out of thin air. I got a chuckle on that one. Sorry about that, folks. Captain Alejandro is spinning us around again for our special extended bonus river journey. Well, as we spin around, we have a nice view of Sears Tower. It's right up in front of us. You guys can see what I was talking about with kind of cigarette-looking design. Now, also, if you crane your neck up there, you might be able to see a couple of boxes poking out the top of the tower. I know a few people on board have already experienced this, but there are these big glass reinforced boxes up at the top of that building you can step out onto and then look down on the city below your feet. Now, these glass boxes are extremely soundly built. If you go out on them, you have nothing to worry about. It's really more of just a will thing, willing yourself to step out and look below you. You can do all kinds of stuff up there for your photo ops. My mom has a picture of me doing a headstand up there right above the city skyline. So if you get the chance, go up to the top of Sears Tower and check out those glass boxes on the ledge. Now, I'm gonna sip my water because it's hot and I need to hydrate, so have a sip of whatever you're drinking too. All right, Captain Alejandro is turning us around. We're going to be making our way back home to the dock, but do not worry, folks, the tour's not done yet. I still have a lot of stuff to talk about. What I'm going to talk about right now is very important in Chicago's history, and that was the World's Fair of 1893. Now, this World's Fair was a very, very big deal for the city. This was, if you're been keeping track of dates, just about 20 years after the Great Chicago Fire. So Chicago saw the opportunity to host the World's Fair as a chance to reinvent ourselves in the eyes of the world. Now, it was announced that America was going to be the host country for the World's Fair. There were 3 main cities in contention. There was us here in Chicago, our good friends down in St. Louis, and the people of NYC City. Now, Chicago really wanted to host this World's Fair. We wanted it so bad that we sent all of our fastest talking politicians and lobbyists to all the committee meetings. Well, a newspaper reported that the men from Chicago talked so much and with such frequency that their mouths seemed to produce hot air or wind. And that's where we get our nickname, the Windy City. Coincidentally, we also are very windy, but the true reason for this nickname is people here just don't know how to shut up. I don't know if this tour is any indication, that is still true today. Now, once Chicago was revealed to be the host of the World's Fair, we got to work planning it. We needed to make our World's Fair bigger and better than any World's Fair the world had ever seen. More specifically, it would be better than the Paris World's Fair, the centerpiece of which was the Eiffel Tower. Now, has anybody on board been to the Eiffel Tower? Show of hands, been up to the top of it? Okay, just me. I highly recommend you go over there. It is very pretty. Paris is a beautiful city. Chicago's better, but Paris is still pretty cool. Now, we needed to figure out a way to out-Eiffel the French. So we put our heads together. We got in contact with a very talented architect and engineer, a guy by the name of George Washington Ferris. And George Washington Ferris came up with a concept for what we today call the Ferris wheel. Now, Ferris's original wheel was 3 times the size of the Ferris wheel you guys could see out on Navy Pier. Every single car was the size of a CTA train car, and each of these cars were also equipped with a full-service bar, because Ferris figured people might need a shot of whiskey to calm their nerves as they went up into the clouds. Now, when it comes to us beating out the Eiffel Tower, I'm honestly not so sure if Chicago wins this one. When people think about Paris, usually the first thing they think of is the Eiffel Tower. I have yet to meet a single person that when they think about Chicago, the first thing they think of is a Ferris wheel. That being said, though, Chicago wins in two very important regards. First thing, well, none of you guys have been to the Eiffel Tower, but if you go up there, just so you know, the Eiffel Tower does not do anything at all. It just stands there. You go to the top, sip your champagne, take your picture, and that's it. Ferris wheel spins around. Now, something is always better than nothing. The other reason I'm going to have to give the victory to Chicago is, well, where else in the world can you find an Eiffel Tower? Only one place, Las Vegas, Nevada. You can find a Ferris wheel at every major amusement park all around the entire world. So for these two reasons, functionality and popularity, I'm going to have to give the victory to Chicago. And this World's Fair was not only the first time anybody ever traveled around on a Ferris wheel, it was the